Hello, this is 60 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Rob.
Do you enjoy your own company, Rob? Do you like being alone or do you prefer spending time with friends?
Well, recently I have not seen my friends much because of coronavirus. In fact, I have hardly seen anyone these past years.
It sounds like Rob has become a bit of hermit, someone who lives alone and apart from society.
Yes, I have been forced to spend time alone, but it would not be my choice. I would much rather be societies and visiting fans.
If, like Rob, the idea of being alone does not appeal to you, it might be hard to understand why anyone would choose to be a hermit, but some people do. And in this program, we'll be hearing some of the reason why.
Throughout histories and across all cultures, there have been people who choose to leave behind the life and people they long to live in isolation and silence.
People like Christopher Wright, an American man who lived in complete isolation in the forest of Maine mean for nearly 30 years. When hikers discovered his tent, all they found was an alarm clock. So my quiz question is this: why did Christopher Wright, the hermit of the Mean Woods, need an alarm clock? Was it A, to remind him when to hide his tent, B, to frighten away wild animals, or C, to wake him up at the coldest part of the night so he didn't freeze to death?
Well, if he wanted to be alone so much, I guess he needed to be invisible. So I will say A, to remind him to hide his tent.
Okay, Rob will find the answer later. Christopher Wright may be the extreme example of someone seeking solitude, but there are many other motivations for becoming a hermit.
Some people are looking for peace and silence, and for others, it's about being closer to God, focusing on what's inside and finding a sense of joy. joy.
Ming Hu is a former Liberian who now runs a
So
website all about hermits. He says that in ancient times, many Chinese hermits seeking solitude were followers of the philosopher Confucius.
here's my host talking about Confucius to BBC World Service program, The Right Factor.
His dictum was something like, when the emperor is good, serve; when the emperor is evil, we recuse. And so over 1,000 years at least there were a lot of recuse, a lot of educated men who simply couldn't tolerate any more evil. They simply dropped out and they would migrate to small villages to farm. Ming Hui mentions Confucius' dictum. A dictum is a short statement or saying which expresses some wise advice or a general truth about life.
Confucius Texans advised that when the empire was evil, people should become recluse people like hermits who live alone and avoid contact with others.
In the interview, Ming Hui used recuse as a verb to recuse, but this is very uncommon. A more modern way of saying this is to drop out, to reject the normal way society works and live outside the system.
A bit like the hippies in the like 1916s, you mean?
Right, although most hippies weren't looking for isolation, they did have something in common with hermits: the desire to challenge society's rules and conventions.
Someone who combines the hippies and the hermits is Covalent Greatest Cyrus, managing part of a long tradition of Chris, Christians, hermits. Uh, Solar spends 14 days and nights alone on the shoulder of Skype, taking golf in the silence of the movement's Scots Islands.
For her, the magic of silence is something to be embraced and taught to children. Here she explains more to BBC Civil Service, the why factor.
Most people first encounter silence in bereavements, in relationship breakdown, and in death, and that seems to be about the worst place to start. People say, but what should we do? Never even use go to your room on your own. As a punishment, you use it as a reverse. Darling, you have been so good all days. You have been so helpful. Why don't you go to your room for half an hour now and be on your own? A choice, a reverse. Suarez says that most people experience silence after a bereavement, the death of a relative or a close friend.
She also thinks that parents should never tell her children to go your room as a punishment. Instead, being alone should be a treat, a reward, or a gift of something special and enjoyable. That way, how children learn that being alone can actually be enjoyable.
I'm still wondering about that American participants rate. I suppose living alone in the woods was a treat for him.
I suppose so. But why did he need an alarm clock?
Yes, your quick question, Leo. I thought maybe it was to remind him to hide his tents. Was I right?
Well, incredibly, Rob, the answer was C, to wake him up at the closest part of the night so he didn't freeze to death.
That's someone who really wants to be left alone. Are humans, in other words, or are equipped two ways of describing people who live alone and avoid others.
Okay, let's recap the rest of vocabulary, starting with dictum, a short saying often giving wise advice or expressing a general truth about life.
People who draft out reject the normal rules of society and live outside the system.
Many people experience solitude after a bereavement, the death of a close friend or relative.
And finally, a treat is reward or gift of something specific and enjoyable.
That's all for now, but whether you are listening alone or with others, we hope you will enjoy us again soon here at 6 Minute English.
Don't forget you will find us on our website or you can download our free apps so you won't miss any of our programs and we are on all the main so social media sites. Bye bye.
Bye for now.